You are watching Concussed, Understanding the Invisible Injury, brought to you by the good people at Connected Mental Health and, of course, our friends at the Hockey News. And also, don't forget, we are part of the Fired Up Network. We're really excited about bringing that platform to you in this new September hockey season. Of course, Gouche Live by Gouche Live Productions, a lot of changes that are coming on. Obviously, you can go onto our websites, look on our Facebooks, our tweets, our twits, and of course TikTok as we move forward with a new hockey season that's coming up. And with a new hockey season, we have to obviously talk about concussions and injuries. And I've got one of the best. Not only is he a very good friend of mine, not only is he one of the great ambassadors of our Stop Concussion platform worldwide, he's also the creator of the Safe4Sport platform. This is one of the manuals that he has created alongside Stop Concussions and, of course, Keith Primo, myself, Barry Monroe. He is the mentor. He is the guru. He is Malcolm Sutherland, and he is live right here.
Hey, Kerry Goulet.
Hey, Malcolm Sutherland. Obviously, you know, we're doing Concussed. The reason why I wanted you on here today is understanding the invisible brain injury. You have been with me for a long time, helping me do this crusade around the world. And without you, we would have just been a platform doing a lot of talking. But because of you and great people that you worked with along the way, obviously with funding from Stop Concussion and Shoot for a Cure, obviously the Johnson & Johnson organization helping us through their tournaments and the EMS platforms, they've allowed us to get a budget together to allow you to do what you do best. So before we get into what you're actually doing, let's talk about Malcolm Sutherland, the player and the coach, and give our listeners an understanding why you can speak so fluently about concussions and, of course, injury prevention.
Yeah, thanks, Kerry. It's something that we've been around, you and I, doing for a long time, that's for sure. And when you mentioned some of those organizations, boy, it's exciting and humbling to look back and to see really the impact we've had in a number of jurisdictions, hockey nations, and around the world, as you mentioned. But to answer your question, like I really came up as a young kid in minor hockey in Thunder Bay, Ontario. And around the age of 12 or 13, really got into the game. And I wanted to study it. And I remember I was talking with my parents and my mom one evening about learning the finer aspects of the sport, the technical skills. And I grew up in a neighborhood where there was great hockey players all around us. Jamie McDonald was a neighbor down the street, and some old players that I came up with as well. Robbie DeGagne was right in the area. Garnet McKechnie was a player. Mike Plesh was a major junior player. So we were surrounded in a strong hockey culture. And that conversation I had with my parents was, you know, how do these guys learn these skills? And besides just going to the outdoor rink or the local rink. And my mom went to the library and came back with a coaching manual. And I was amazed to see that people could actually write about sport and study it. And that led me on a path to go to school. University at Lakehead University and do a physical education degree while I was playing, and I got a chance to play senior hockey for the storied Thunder Bay Twins, and they were multi-Allen Cup champions and had professional players that played for them, and you played for them as well. And you know, it was an exciting opportunity for me to go to school because at the time Lakehead University didn't have a university hockey program. So I really started studying the game and trying to understand it. And it led me to also understand the dark side of the sport, which was the serious injury occurrence that knocks players out of the game and can lead to life-changing events.
Well, of course, you taking on this mission at a young age, and then we came along, and I met you briefly in Thunder Bay when I was playing for the Thunder Bay Twins, and that friendship never started or was not concrete at that particular moment. I then traveled the world and came back, and I got an opportunity to get together with you and the notorious Dr. William Montepar, and that's where things really started to take off. And I wanted to show, as we were talking about it, I see that you've got the Source for Sports jacket. It's an antique. Obviously,
Yeah.
we did the head zone in Source for Sports, and here's one of the manuals. It's called the tip manuals that you were a big part in putting together. It's an incredible. This one happens to be in French because there's not too many English ones left. But this was the beginning of an incredible work of art, I would say, through your hands. But also, William Montepar has got to be given a lot of credit, with the sensors in the helmet, long before people were actually doing that. Walk us
Yeah.
through that phase.
Yeah, that was an interesting. So I was already working, and I was working as an ergonomist, which looks at how people perform their jobs safely, and studying the physical requirements of work. And I got this phone call from Bill Montepar, and Bill called me and said, "Hey, we're doing this concussion and injury prevention program. Would you like to consult on it?" And I said, absolutely. And I was involved at that time also with Hockey Canada. I was a technical director, and I was leading development programs in Ontario, sitting on the hockey development committee with Paul Carson and Johnny Misley and some other great names like that. And Bill said, "Would you like to do it and really look at how to prevent concussion?" And initially, I said to him, "You're crazy, Bill. Like there's no way, and it's just part of the game." And so I reached out to some friends who were also coaching minor hockey, and kind of did an informal survey, and they said the same thing. They said, "I don't think there's anything we can do." And it just sparked the interest in me, because I hate hearing that you can't do anything, and I hate hearing no as an answer. So I phoned Bill back and said yes, and that led me on a whole nother path. I actually took a leave of absence, went back to school, and began to research what happens before a serious injury, a spinal cord or a concussive injury, or even in some cases we looked at lacerations. So all the serious injuries, what happens before those? What are the antecedents of serious injury in sport? And we put together a program known as Play It Cool, and it was directed at coaches, and it was an online educational component. And we reached out into the hockey community and started to go down that path.
Well, I remember you and I actually going and doing a presentation at Paramount where we have come full circle with Jim
Yeah.
Thompson, if you recall. And we had a
Yes.
bunch of coaches there. You presented, and we both looked at each other thinking, wow, we're dumbfounded. We were too early in the game. Just before you comment, look at what I found. I wanted to post this because it was sitting on my desk. It's when we won the Allen Cup, and
Yeah, yeah.
it's actually autographed. So if you want one, it was actually we used it as a promotional to when we were doing our contact clinics, and we'll talk about that in a few seconds. Walk us through that, because I think we were pioneers. You obviously went to your friends. There's no hope, and I know that you love a challenge, as did Bill Montepar. And there were a lot of naysayers when we started out doing the things we do. I'm not sure you were with me when we actually went to an arena. It was York University Arena. There were 7 rinks. We had Keith and Wayne and whole big production and thousands of pamphlets, and we were promoting the fact that, hey, we've got to take care of this injury called a concussion, and what you as a parent, what you should look for your child. And we had zero interest. Like, people would be walking, that's not for us, right? Because until it happened to them, they really didn't want to know about it.
Well,
Walk
yeah,
us through the first
and
phase.
yeah, and this was way before Rowan's Law,
Yeah.
where Rowan Stringer, unfortunately, female rugby player, returned to play, had previous concussions, and post-concussion syndrome, and then succumbed to her injury. She passed away, and there was legislation. So it predated all that, that's for sure. And we were really at the forefront. It was really before programs like Parachute were just starting, and it was great to see the community trying to rally behind making sport safe. But really, at that time, no one really talked in those terms. You played sport and you took risks. And we believe, and you and I have talked about this, and we've presented to groups. We believe that you can play sport at the highest level, and it doesn't have to be at the risk of serious injury.
Yep.
So you can still play and be highly competitive. You can come in as a young player, learn the game safely, and participate your entire life. Sport for life model is really what we began to figure out through our research, and that's where Safe4Sport came.
You are listening to Malcolm Sutherland, one of our top ambassadors and the creator of the Safe4Sports platform, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. You mentioned, obviously learning more about this. We had Jordan on, our producer, who, playing junior C, basically he suffered a concussion. And, we don't think about a goalie, number one, getting a concussion, or at the lower levels, because we always equate it to, the big crushing blows that we see in the NHL. One of the things that I wanted to remind people of that you have traveled the world with us. You've made presentations throughout. There was a great picture that was just up here. You've also been a head coach of Team Canada in the Ice Hockey Classic, which has been an incredible fundraiser, but also giving us the ability to go on the street and actually get to the grassroots. And you mentioned Parachute is a very high-level government-funded organization, whereas we're more event-based. And the only way we can do it is doing things. And here's a great picture of you. This is a triumph picture because we were that is in, if I'm not mistaken, that is in Newcastle.
I believe it is. Yeah.
And you had probably about 100 kids. I couldn't come because I think we had a leak in the floor and you had to go up with all the boys on your own. Just an amazing opportunity for us to educate people on it. So talk to me about, obviously you solidified the Safe4Sports. We're very blessed to have, good funding at the beginning of this. Obviously with the pandemic, we kind of slowed down a little bit and we're still continuing on doing what we do. How did you come up with the idea of, I know you and I talked about it, and then you started looking at some of these incredible small area games and understanding the world. You educated yourself not only on Hockey Canada, North American wide hockey, you took it on a global concept and you developed this obviously prevention handbook, which is amazing, and every coach and every parent should have one. How did it come to be?
Well, I was fortunate because of the research that we got into with Dr. Montepar. We really looked at the design of sport programs throughout the world and include mostly the combative type of sports and invasion games. So those include hockey, football, soccer, rugby, Australian rules football, and sports similar to that. Even basketball, and we looked at how they were being taught, and the reason why we looked at how they were being taught and coached is because we knew with those those sports rather, that there was a greater rate of concussive injury in those sports. And as I said previously, we wanted to understand what happens before a serious injury occurs, an upstream approach. We were less concerned with how to manage the injury post when someone had already sustained a concussion. There was other groups that were doing that and doing a good job, all the return to play guidelines. We were more interested in getting upstream and trying to figure out how to prevent that. So I had mentioned the Play It Cool program, and we targeted that at coaches, but it was a fantastic learning experience. It was an online education program. What we really discovered, and by looking at those other sports as well, is that coaches are more motivated to learn when it's an apprenticeship model.
Right.
When they can mentor an elite coach or a former NHL player, where they can learn gradually and along with their players that they're coaching. And so that whole program, the Play It Cool, evolved into Safe4Sports. And we started to look at other sport development models and see what they were doing right. And we applied them to our program. One of the things that we recognized that sport programs were doing right is they were using an awareness process for teaching and a discovery-based model. And that was the small area games that you had mentioned. And we found that when athletes were involved in learning in small area games, not only were they more engaged and exciting and active in their own learning, but they were also building awareness skills that were preventative of serious injury. So we did a whole bunch of things like that. We came up with like the 3 pillars of Safe4Sports, and those were the action, attitude, and awareness. And I already mentioned the awareness piece, but we also found when we looked at, again, pre-injury, that sometimes athletes were playing outside of the rules. They were trying to walk that line between illegal play and legal play and putting themselves and others at risk. So we really dug into the attitude piece, what could be done better in sport. And we borrowed. We looked at other activities, martial arts. We looked at combative sports like even boxing, and we found that there's certain things that they do to build attitude and resilience in their athletes, and we brought that into the Safe4Sport program. And the action piece is all about, well, who can take this to the athletes? And it's coaches, but it's not only them, it's administrators, it's parents, it's officials. So those stakeholders, we began to engage and plug in information for each one of the stakeholders. So it was multifactorial, which just means that everybody has a piece to do to prevent a complicated process of injury before it occurs.
Listen, you're listening to Malcolm Sutherland here on Concussed, Understanding the Invisible Injury. And we know that the platform that you've developed and has been on the market for well over 2 years. Obviously, we've run into some hiccups. We obviously with COVID, but one of the things that you mentioned was, coaches, because we'd started with Play It Cool, we noticed that coaches loved that engagement. They would love to be able to have that one-on-one and that social contact. Once this happened, everything went online. You kind of lose that. Obviously, you lose the one-on-one physicality of it. Being able to, hey, Malcolm, can you show me this? And sometimes you can't do that on screen. And even the kids, that we were all doing Zoom. Who even knew what Zoom was 18 months ago? And I think we're just overwhelmed with it all. Question I wanted to ask you, I want to say a big shout out to Robert Wine. He's on every show. Thank you. Of course, we couldn't do this without you.
Hi,
Jeff Lieberman comes up and he asks a very good question. He says, we need education, and parents need to come on board. And the final one is, Malcolm, how do we get coaches and parents to come on board? Are they willing to pay a monthly fee for some sort of app? I know that Hockey Canada, you and I were part of that, when Keith launched it with Dr. Tater. And it just seemed to fizzle out because parents didn't seem to want to put money out to solve this, even though it was like an insurance policy. Hey, if your son or daughter gets hurt, here are some things that you should look at. Let's get them to a doctor or get to a concussion expert, because that little information in your hand could save you all those long-term. Jordan, we had him on. We had Jamie Uretsky talking about her daughter, how long it took them to find the right direction. Love to hear you talk to us about how do we get buy-in from coaches and parents?
Well, and again, it's a different series of skills for each stakeholder. So for parents, they really play a supportive role. Excuse me. And that supportive role really is about creating an environment and an opportunity for your athletes to strive and do well under the leadership of others. So as parents, the Safe4Sport modules are about how to encourage your athlete to participate safely and listen to their coaches, and also ask questions. Because in the coaches component, we're teaching coaches how to ask more questions so they're listening to their athletes. So when it's coming from parents and players and coaches, we're aligning the model all together. And for so many years, not just in hockey but in other sports as well, the parents were on the sidelines, and they felt rather helpless, and especially when it came to situations where they were somewhat uncomfortable. They didn't know how they can influence the activities and the games to become more safe.
Right.
And that's what we really did with our Safe4Sport module, is we created a process for them to work with others, and those others people being coaches, managers, officials. And it really paints a proper picture for them and what they can expect to see in the programs that they put their son and daughter. So one fantastic example is from the very first day, starting to ask the organizers of sport, is this the activity for my child? Do I understand that it's going to be so many times a week? Does it fit into your family lifestyle? Are there going to be expectations in training and travel that maybe you didn't anticipate? Is there going to be a highly competitive atmosphere around your child that maybe you don't think they're ready for? And this idea of readiness is really, really important in athletic development. We just saw the Olympics, where one of the most elite performers in the world in gymnastics pulled out because she did not feel she was ready to compete.
Right.
And that's a real strong and important component when it comes to injury prevention.
We saw that with one of the ladies' top level tennis players either. Also,
Right.
it's $1 million question. I know Jeff Lieberman's really interested in trying to find this out. Parents pay good money for a coach, skills coach, shooting coach, goalie coach, all different types of coaches, stick handling coaches, but yet they would not put money out to learn the very valuable information that we have provided. This is a free organization. It's funded by ourselves. Why would parents not want to be a part of the solution? Meaning that if they knew more, they would be able to go to that coach and say, hang on, coach, I don't want to interfere, but you know what? You're not taking enough. You're not learning enough. We don't want the coaches to be the doctor or the parent, but we want them to at least be able to recognize the issues, pull that child out at all costs until he or she is ready to go back. Why are parents reluctant?
Well, sometimes it's lack of knowledge, Kerry. And it's we're looking now in our sport of ice hockey, and we've been in areas, of course, where the game is really new. But even in Canada, when we look at new Canadians and we look at people that haven't been involved as much as we have, the sport is relatively new, and they don't know how things are done, what the conventions are, when they should have a voice and when they shouldn't have a voice, when they should speak up and when they shouldn't. So, all those components can lead to uncertainty. And you know yourself, when you're uncertain, when you're doing things, the chances of you making a mistake and an error are higher. So, in generally speaking, you can put your child in a situation where they're overwhelmed. They're not, as I said, ready. So one example that I had recently is I'm coaching a junior team here in Thunder Bay, and we had a young player come out and had not played a game of midget hockey yet, but wanted to play and try to play hockey at the junior level. And when I assessed their skill level, they weren't ready. They weren't ready to play. But they had this understanding that maybe if they just show up, they could make the team. If I allowed that player on the ice, they would have been at risk of
Yes.
probably serious injury.
Right.
So those are the nuances and the components as parents that we have to learn. And we talked about the small area games for players and allowing them to learn situational awareness. Well, that's the situational awareness piece for parents. It's, what should you be doing and when? When is my athlete ready for a competitive traveling team or a tournament team?
Yeah.
All those things are nuanced in our sport, and you kind of learn them as you go. But if you're new to the game or you haven't had a lot of experience in athletics, you can get over your head very quickly.
Listen, I can quote you on a fact that happened this weekend with me. I worked all day. At night, I was at the barbecue, not concentrated. Legs were tired. An old guy like me, and I came in. I wasn't wearing shoes. I was just wearing socks. Stepped on the grate that is for the glass sliding door, the patio doors, and down I went. I did a tumble, hit my knee, hit both elbows. Thank God my head didn't bounce off the marble floor. I would have broken it, and we'd been paying for it. But there's a classic example of me not being physically active. I worked all day up and down the stairs, lifting stuff, and I was fatigued. I was tired in the top of all of that, and then boom, I could have had a serious injury. And I think that we'll get to that in a second because I really want to talk about that. I don't know if you had an opportunity, but the Concussion Legacy Foundation just released a video with our friend Brett Favre, and it was a young boy talking to his parents saying, you got to look into being, concussions because I'm not sure I'm ready for it. And here's the kid telling the parents. Do you believe in the fact that instead of just racing out and learning body checking, we have contact in everything that we do? Do you believe in the age factor, like waiting till 14 to get them into body contact and teach them the aspects of what you've been doing with Safe4Sports and progressively growing into understanding what body checking is at the level and at the age they should be?
Yeah, and of course, the truth is that we begin to teach checking from the very youngest age groups in the sport because the foundation for the checking skills begins with skating. So we're talking about the ability to pivot and turn quickly, the ability to what we call in the higher levels of the game mirror skate, matching speed and tempo. All those components are taught to players as they are starting to get older and older. If they're missed and they're not taught correctly, then there's gaps in that performance. And if I guess it would be analogous to a mechanic. If you don't have the proper tool in your toolbox, you won't be able to fix anything. So, one of the components that we spend a lot of time is talking about the skating skills, and then we move into the stick skills. And I work hockey schools all summer, and I teach the kids the 5 ways to use your stick in order to check. Again, we haven't even begun to talk about the progression involved in body contact, and then the final one being body checking. So those components, that model is a constant in the sport and is a way to progress, but it has to be taught at the youngest age group. And then when the governing body has determined that body checking is appropriate, then the players have all those prerequisite skills and they're able to do it with confidence. So one of the groups that we've studied intensely is athletic development models, and we looked at ones in Australia, we looked at ones in Europe, and we've looked at North American style development models. And one of the things they talk about is physical literacy. So it's like reading.
Yep.
If you don't know a word, you can't really read and you string a whole bunch of words together. And it's the same in sport. We have to create physically literate athletes that can put the technical skills together and then be able to play. And in a complex sport like hockey, that takes many years to do and to allow kids to play well. So we in our model of Safe4Sports are creating physically literate athletes, and at the same time we're educating coaches on what books they should have,
Yep.
what technical skills and tactical skills, and that all comes together to mean that we're preparing athletes, and that's the first foundation of Safe4Sport. How do we prepare correctly as athletes, as players, as parents, as even as administrators in sport to create this safe environment for the game we love?
Well, it's a great segue into the next point. Obviously, Stop Concussion Foundation has worked tirelessly with you to deliver the Safe4Sports platform, the prevention program. And what's really exciting is that we are now having the opportunity through a guy named Mike Burrell, who's in China. He was actually in Wuhan, China, when this all broke out, and he's helping us direct it. And in your whole platform, we talked about the parents and the players and getting them prepared to play. But one of the most important things is it's really the coaches that need to be educated in a proper way to disseminate that information properly. Not every great player is a great coach. So, and it doesn't mean you can't be a great player and become a great coach, but it's not just automatic. You need to go through those processes. And of course, you being one of the highest level coaches in the hockey platform, you were able to take that information, develop it into a coaches certification program. And that's what we're really excited about as we move forward and get hopefully out of this pandemic and travel the world and bring that message to hockey coaches and of course other sports, but we're specific hockey right now. Talk to us about how exciting that is.
Yeah, and I mean it's incredible because it's really taking theory and practice and putting it in the hands of the grassroots or the coaches and the administrators, as you said, so that these programs can provide quality experience for athletes. We can have kids being engaged in sport for their entire lives. One of the phenomena we see in our sport in North America is that kids are leave sport early. So by the time that they are just starting to mature physically and become a complete athlete, they're already basically done minor hockey in Canada, and that's true with a few other sports as well. And we know that the development process for sport is not a frying pan; it's a slow cooker. And we need to spend time with our athletes through the proper development stages, and they call it age and stage, Carrie. And when you're doing the right thing at the right time with the right athlete, then you have a recipe for future success. And that future success for some will mean that they'll stay involved in sport their entire lives. For others, it'll mean they'll get to the pinnacle of performance and get to the Olympics or get to the NHL or play at a professional level. And that's really the pinnacle. But it's not the only path that exists for athletes in sport. You can continue to engage and play, hopefully for life, because healthy people that are involved in sport are contributors to our society, and they're healthy, um, well-adjusted people that So we really want to maximize those opportunities at all levels and let athletes enter and exit as they see appropriate.
Yep.
And so we're creating those pathways for them.
And of course, very importantly, as we do that, these athletes can take the cornerstone of what Safe4Sports is and apply it in other parts of their life. And you're not building athletes, you're building good people first. And that's so important. Listen, Malcolm, thank you so much for bringing us to this part. But I wanted to ask you, you've taken on a new role. Obviously, you're our a player of development and safety for Safe4Sports and Stop Concussions, but you're also now a coach. And I wanted to ask this question because we talked a little bit about being prepared and getting ready. It's got to be a different space right now, being a coach and having these young boys, as you mentioned, coming and getting ready, and they just think they can come on the ice. Tell us what are the factors that are working against sport right now with the COVID situation, kids not being ready? And what do you have to do to get your parents and parents and players ready?
Yeah, and it's everything's different. And I was just saying to my group yesterday, being resilient and adaptive to change is something that we learn from sport, and that we really have to apply now. In my particular region, the numbers of COVID infection are low, and we're well into our return to play stages. Our sport governing body has provided us a real good guideline and modules to keep us on the straight and narrow, but things are challenging. So just getting to the rink, sometimes the rinks aren't open access, so you have to wait for someone to come and open a door for you. Then you need your mask, and you need to know that there may be the dressing rooms are not wide open, and you might not even be able to bring your hockey bag in. So you really have to be prepared to protect yourself and others. And on the other side of that, besides all the information on personal protective equipment and taking those sort of a good look at policy, the other thing that we're learning is athletes are either very excited to get back into sport and eager and excited, and then the other athlete might be a little fearful. There could be anxiety and concern about getting into sport again because are they going to get sick, and what does it mean if I bump into little Sally in the corner? Oops, I took a drink of little Billy's water bottle, and
Right.
So there's all those concerns as well. The most important thing that I say to coaches and people as they're getting ready to go to the rink is give themselves some extra time. Make sure you make a few phone calls in advance so you know what to expect, and then go slow. We've been out of the rink for a long period of time. Lots of athletes are deconditioned. They're not quite ready. So a gradual process of reentry, working on basic skills, and then getting into more competitive play is probably the best advice.
Well, Malcolm Sutherland, I can't thank you enough for all that you have done and all that you are doing, and of course what you'll do in the future. And I just can't wait till this pandemic gets over so that you and I can get back on the ice together. We've been in Regensburg with the kids. We've been in New Zealand, in Auckland, in Queenstown, obviously in Sydney and Adelaide. It's just been an amazing ride and journey with you, Malcolm. Thank you so much for what you do for sport. There is not a better ambassador on the planet.
No, and I just want to thank you, Kerry, because without you, those opportunities wouldn't be there. We probably would not have Safe4Sport. It would still be kind of a bunch of written scribbles on my desk somewhere. So, really your energy and expertise and the things that you do have really made this possible. And I appreciate that.
See you in Beijing, kid.
Okay.
Thanks, Malcolm. You were just listening to Malcolm Sutherland, one of the best, I'll tell you what, and he knows his stuff. I'll tell you what, he will make sure your child and any player in any sport is safe, or at least mitigates the risk of injury. Listen, I'm bringing Jordan up for a few minutes, our producer. I'd love to hear your take on obviously what you just heard from Malcolm. I know that we had a conversation a couple of weeks ago about your injury, and then we had the opportunity to have Jamie Uretsky on, where she talked about when an athlete's hurt, obviously there's a new normal. Now we know that a parent or a caretaker has a new normal. After all the things that you heard Malcolm say, how important would that have been for you and your father or your mother to understand it a little bit more? Is it an important thing, or can we just continue on doing what we're doing?
Yeah, because like when I got my concussions, I still didn't know anything about it. I even know it was a head injury at one point. I thought it was some random body part, but at the same time, this would have changed everything. I mean, in terms of I was playing contact hockey with men as a 15, 14, 13-year-old. Like there's some things that I probably would have changed going back even to my time in Hong Kong before I really had my real battles with concussions.
Yeah. Well, you're listening to Concussed, Understanding the Invisible Injury. You've been there, you understand. And I'm really excited about what obviously Malcolm, and after hearing what, he lays it out very clearly of what we need to do. And I wanted to ask you about the coaching aspect of it. One of the things that he stressed and strives for is the perfection of the coach. Understand, again, we don't want them to be doctors. And I think you understand that too. All we want them to do is understand the basics, the one-on-ones, and allow the doctors to be the doctors, and getting the parents involved too, that they kind of work in unison to make sure the child. I know that you didn't experience that. How important do you think Malcolm's platform is going to be going forward to do that, unify everybody?
Yeah, I think it's gonna be huge. I mean, just because like that is the biggest issue with concussions is understanding what it is and how it happens and how do you kind of control that and kind of make the game a little bit safer. We've seen a lot of like leagues like the NFL has kind of incorporated a few more rules over the years to help this exact same situation. So I think it's a great chance for everyone to kind of move on and replicate the sport in a safer way.
Listen, I'm just looking. I just recall you making a statement. I apologize that I do not have the name, but I do. As we wrap this up, I do want to send my condolences to the family of the young Mexican girl that passed away a couple of days ago, maybe a week ago, in boxing. She took too many blows to the head, and unfortunately, couldn't stop the bleeding, and we lost this very young athlete. I do want to send my condolences, my thoughts, not only to her family, but obviously the young lady that obviously hit the young girl, and just for boxing in general. Please say a prayer for this young lady and young family. Jordan, always a pleasure having you on. Thank you for keeping us on the straight and narrows, and I will be softer on my mug.
I got a few other things. I got a list. Don't worry.
I still need a tooth. And listen, it's always great to have youth. We got the wily veteran, of course, with Gouche. We got the medium with Malcolm Sutherland, of course, and we've got Jordan in the background helping us make sure we deliver you the best. Do not forget, there's going to be a lot of changes to the Gouche Live productions. We've got, obviously, with Gouche Live itself, tomorrow I'm at the bottom line for the noon. I'm cooking up some great food, so make sure you check it out. Gouche Live on the bottom line with the bottom line. This has all been brought to you by those good people at Fired Up Network and the Hockey News. Good night.